Every generation in gaming has hidden gems that sadly don't get the recognition they deserve. Today, I'm going to be talking about what I consider to be the most modern hidden gem from one of the industry's most recognisable names, Gravity Rush 2 by Sony PlayStation. When you see the words PlayStation developed game, you must think that it's inherently extremely popular because PlayStation is one of the 3 biggest names in gaming. But in reality, PlayStation has created multiple gems that sadly aren't as big as they deserve, even if they are loved by all those who have played them. The funny thing is, all of these games have something in common. They all create experiences that other games have never provided in the same way before. You know, they're unique. But they are also all made by Japan Studio, a set of development teams that PlayStation has disbanded in favour of Team ASOBI, the driving force behind Astrobot and Astro's Playroom. Now, that's not to say that Team ASOBI doesn't deserve to survive, because of course it does. Astro's Playroom is arguably one of the best launch titles ever made, and it's free with the PS5 when you buy it. It's a nostalgic platforming delight that I couldn't get enough of. I'm sure Team ASOBI are going to make wonderful games in the future, Astro or otherwise, but that is all that remains. Let's go back to the PlayStation 1. Have you heard of a little franchise called Ape Escape? Ape Escape is one of the most creative platformers ever made due to changing the conventions of the controller. You needed an analog controller as the right analog stick is your action button. If you're using your net to capture a monkey, the way you move the analog stick is where the net is going to go. Same with all the other gadgets. And the gadgets are all swapped out at your command in the pause menu and are binded to the shape buttons. So if you want to jump, you're using R1. Yeah, it's unconventional to say the least, but it feels phenomenal. It may take a little bit of time to get used to, but once it clicks, and that won't take long, you'll discover one of the best and arguably the most underrated first-party platformer on the PS1. And it is definitely way ahead of its time. Now that's not to say that it was so unpopular that that's all we saw, it did spawn sequels, but when you compare it to the mascots of PlayStation, it doesn't really come up in conversation. There are of course many other PlayStation 1 gems, like Parappa the Rapper or Vib Ribbon, though those weren't specifically developed by Japan Studio, who we're talking about today. Legend of Dragoon was though, I really need to get around to playing that one day. If we skip ahead, on the PS2, Team Ico created Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, and whilst they're obviously masterpieces and cult classics, they weren't as popular as you'd expect back in the day. People loved them, sure, but they didn't sell super well. The PSP had Loco Roco, which only sold 30,000 in its first week in Japan, and 130,000 units in Japan throughout the entire year. It sold better in America and Europe, but still not massive sales, which is a shame because it's yet another masterpiece, and the PSP sold really well. And then we get to the most disappointing failure. Puppeteer is a 2D platformer on the PS3, made by, haha, you guessed it, Japan Studio. It was released in 2013, and when I first saw the trailers, I knew I needed to pick this up, and I did. But I was busy at the time, so I never recorded it, and it wasn't until this year, 2021, when I actually found time to record it and play it on the channel. Puppeteer is without a doubt one of the most creative games ever made. The whole game is set as a stage play. The levels have to look and feel accurate to this concept, and to say they pulled it off with style and genius is an understatement. I have so much respect for what this game sets out to do and what it actually achieves. It's an insane undertaking, and much like almost everything else Japan Studio has made, is a masterpiece. I'm not joking when I say everyone studying to be a developer should play this game. If it inspires one new game, then that game's going to be something pretty special. But Puppeteer is criminally underrated. Puppeteer sold less than 40,000 copies worldwide in its first week, barely over 10,000 in the second. This is such a disappointing thing to discover, but maybe it's time we get to what the title of this video talks about. Gravity Rush is a game made by the Team Gravity division of Japan Studio, formerly known as Project Siren, as they made the Siren series. Gravity Rush, also known as Gravity Daze in Japan, released on the Vita in 2012, in the Vita's first year, and sold over 200,000 copies, which is actually pretty impressive, especially since the Vita didn't do well. It was later ported to the PS4, and shortly after, in 2017, Gravity Rush 2 was released. Gravity Rush is a good game, there is no denying that, but Gravity Rush 2 is something else. So, what is Gravity Rush 2? I should probably explain that now that we're a decent chunk into the video. You play as Kat, a lovely gravity-shifting girl who wants to enjoy life and bring peace to places where she can. You take part in 27 story missions, and there is never a dull moment. I won't spoil the story or the bosses for you, but this is some of my favourite places to visit of any video game, and that's partly because of its visual style, and I guess it might also have something to do with how unbelievably fun gravity shifting is. It might take a little bit to get your head around, but once you do, exploring the many locations this game has to offer is an absolute delight. I personally love replaying the game just to fly around. It's so fun! And okay, I need to talk about this. I've been wanting to do a deep dive on this for ages. This is genuinely one of my favourite places in video games. Jirga Para Lhao is the setting for the second quote-unquote story of the game. The game is sort of split into stories even though it's continuous. Anyway, you arrive in Lake Kolmosna, and it's a bustling market city filled with wonder to explore. You discover some of your cargo has been stolen and you need to get it back. After a bit of investigating, you discover it's in Ley Elgona. Ley Elgona is not like Lake Kolmosna. For starters, it's directly underneath and is much darker and dreary. The houses are made of wood and scraps and are derelict. Later on, you discover it's sort of a misunderstanding, and end up protecting the thieves by some military who plan on taking them out. Shortly after, you have to go help a snobby lady up in Ley Havina. Yes, up in Ley Havina. It is very high up above Ley Kolmosna, and if you don't understand the actual genius of this, let me explain. The game deals with political and social class with literal height. The rich are high, the poor are low, and the middle class are, well, I think you know. I love when verticality is explored in games, and when you've got a game like this, where not even the sky can limit you, this is a beautiful way to showcase the problems in society. I've never seen this issue tackled in a more creative way before, and this is something that has stuck with me for over 4 years. When you pierce through the clouds to discover how different things are down below or up high, accentuated by the music perfectly highlighting where you are, it's arguably one of the most important locations in gaming. And the story that's being showcased behind all of this, it just really is exemplary. I love this place so much. This is the kind of thing Gravity Rush 2 does constantly. Sometimes it's in its locations, or its dialogue, or maybe it's subtle, but it creates these moments that stick with you. And this is the one I wanted to share with you most of all, because I'd be surprised if this didn't impress or surprise you. I was genuinely so kind of delighted to see this show up in a game told in such a perfect way. Now, I've mentioned the movement, but there's actually multiple forms of gravity you discover throughout the game. One which weighs you down, but makes you incredibly strong, and another that makes you as light as air to glide effortlessly. These are all utilised in really fun ways throughout the dungeons and side missions, but I particularly love the depth of the combat as a result. Whilst I do personally prefer to stick with the standard gravity feel, the others are very helpful in various situations, especially bosses, which are incredibly epic, may I add. The bosses are not easy, but wow, they are fun. And very varied too. I want to gush about some of the later bosses and areas, but that would be spoiling things for you. Though I will say that when you see the credits roll for the first time, that is not the end. There's still much more to go, and wow, they change things up in a big way, and are some of my favourite chapters in the game. The game throughout has a really good flow. Some chapters are really slow, but they don't feel slow, if you know what I mean. You're just kind of invested in the lore and the characters from the off, so even when you get some time to breathe, that's not a bad thing at all. But back to the combat. When you're floating and you see something hurtling towards you, and then you press a button to effortlessly avoid it in the air, like an in-air dodge roll, there's nothing quite as satisfying. I love this. I don't know what it is specifically, but floating and fighting is really engaging. Plus, you can manipulate gravity to items around you so you can launch them, and again, it feels really good. I love this game. And the music, oh my god, this game's soundtrack is off the scale. It's up there as one of my favourite soundtracks of all time. So, this is a sequel, so if you decide to play this without playing the first, there are some story beats you won't 100% understand at first. But here's the thing, when I played Gravity Rush 2 for the first time, I hadn't played or seen the first game, and I was able to fill in the few gaps I didn't know pretty easily. I fell in love with the characters, the narrative, the gorgeous art style, the gameplay, and everything else this game has on offer. Play this game and have the time of your life. Honestly, play it for the flying around with gravity. I can't tell you how many hours I've poured into just travelling the world. There's lots to explore and collect, and I've still not found every single thing. It'll keep you occupied for a while. But I guess before we wrap up, I should talk about sales. Gravity Rush 2 had 150,000 sales in its first week, which is not great for a AAA game on the PS4, but it is very low when you consider Horizon Zero Dawn, released just 3 months later, competing with Breath of the Wild, sold 1.8 million in its first week. Gravity Rush 2 has reportedly sold over 800,000, probably close to 1 million now, but given that it's constantly on sale for 70% off when it was already a cheaper game than most PlayStation titles, that's not surprising. I consider this the most underrated modern game because whilst of course there are a ton of games that have received less sales, how strange is it that a game by PlayStation, of all people, just goes so unnoticed and doesn't get the recognition it deserves? Maybe it is not a perfect game, but it is easily a 9.5 to 10 out of 10 in my books, just because of how it made me feel, you know? 10 out of 10 doesn't mean perfection. 10 out of 10 is just a number that people have constructed based around their own thoughts and opinions. And I just adore everything that this game sets out to do. The majority of Japan Studios games, although almost all of them are masterpieces, have technically been failures when it comes to sales. And it's clear that's why Sony has decided to get rid of Japan Studio. But there's a word in the previous sentence that makes the argument for keeping them. Masterpieces. Every game has been unique and special to so many, and by scrapping Japan Studio, that has deprived future childhood classics. It sucks to say that there will probably no longer be these unique and bold titles, nor will there be a third Gravity Rush game, but we can hope maybe one day, something will change, and these bizarre, beautiful games can come into the spotlight once more. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd very much appreciate it if you left a like, subscribe, share the video around. I also have a Twitch, a Twitter, and a Patreon if you'd like to support me and the channel. Tell me, have you played Gravity Rush before? Are you planning on playing it and picking it up? If you haven't, did this video make you think, oh, actually, yeah, I want to give this a go? And if you've not played Gravity Rush, have you played a Japan Studio game? If so, what's your favourite? Yeah, I'd love to know this kind of stuff. I've done another video on the online mode. I didn't really mention online because online has been removed from the game, presumably because they couldn't afford to keep the servers up. The servers were actually planned to shut down in January 2018, but they delayed it due to fans wanting it to stay open for longer, and yeah, it ended up shutting down in July of 2018. There is technically an incomplete game here. Thankfully, there are no trophies connected to online, at least I'm pretty sure there's not. But yeah, there is a mode where, like, there's a photo mode where you could take pictures and share them worldwide, and like you could receive a photo of someone in front of a chest, and that chest would be somewhere in the world, and you use that photo to find the chest. It was such a cool idea, and I actually did a video on it, and I'll link that at the end of the video. But yeah, it's a shame that's no longer there. You did get some perks, one of them being a talisman for infinite flight. I don't think, honestly, Infinite Flight is that good because, when you run out of flight, you stop for like 5 seconds and then you just continue. Like, Infinite Flight doesn't really do anything that affects the game that much. I mean, it's just a convenience thing, but the convenience isn't super big. But, it's just a shame that that's not there anymore, and it was a really nice little feature that I did grind out to complete it before the server shut down. And, yeah, it was cool. Before I end this video, I just want to bring up one more thing. I was talking to my friend Lewis, he makes excellent videos, link in the description, about why the game didn't sell too well, and he thought that maybe it's probably because it was called Gravity Rush 2. If it had a subtitle instead, yeah, people probably wouldn't have thought they needed to play the first game, especially when the first game was only sold on Vita for so long. So yeah, it's a shame, but a really good point that he raised, and I wanted to bring it to you as well. Thank you very much for watching. I've wanted to make this video for a while, and I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity, and I hope you enjoyed it, so thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.